Hey everybody, Danny Roddy of DannyRoddy.com. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, etc. I know I say this all the time, but these videos are always really fun to do because of the conversation that is generated around them. So thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate it. And before we get into today's video, I wanted to just quickly mention I have a free book that's available on my website, DannyRoddy.com. You can watch Organizing the Panic, which is like a 2-hour presentation based on these ideas on this YouTube channel. I have a podcast on this YouTube channel with tons of different topics of like a bioenergetic or thyroid-driven approach to health and just life in general. I make daily content on my Facebook Monday through Friday, and the topics vary from all over. So I'm most interested in hair loss because I think there's so much bad information out there, but that's just my opinion and feel free to disagree with me. So today I want to talk about fibrosis, and I wanted to go through maybe an easy way of understanding how fibrosis happens and then what things you can do about it that I think would help reverse fibrosis. Maybe an easy way to start and easy way to approach every problem is what's going on in the cell and what's happening with the mitochondria, and is carbon dioxide being produced? And as we know, the hair follicle is an extremely glucose dependent tissue. Like fatty acids can't be subbed in, and when there's too much, I think glutamine, it actually inhibits the use of glucose. And so when glucose isn't used, bad things are going to start happening. And that is actually what the first part of fibrosis is, actually the failure to oxidize glucose into carbon dioxide. And so in every type of tissue, the failure to oxidize glucose creates oxidative stress. And so if you look at the cell as reductants like protein, fat, and carbohydrate as being reduced into electrons, and electrons being pulled through the cell to oxygen. When oxygen's not there, which is mainly governed by carbon dioxide, the electrons start creating, going off and damaging proteins and fats within the cell, creating oxidative stress. The oxygen is also becoming a problem, the reactive oxygen species, because it's not being disposed of properly or quickly. And so oxidative stress and then mitochondrial dysfunction are basically synonymous with each other. So this paper from 2012 says recurrent oxidative stress or inhibition of mitochondrial function significantly enhance hair cell death. And of course, we know that oxidative stress is associated with male pattern baldness. And they say these in vitro findings suggest that there may be a role for oxidative stress in the pathogenesis of androgenic alopecia, both in relation to cell senescence and migration, but also secretion of known hair follicle inhibitory factors. And that was in 2015. So one of those known hair follicle inhibitory factors is transforming growth factor beta 1, or TGF-B1. And so oxidative stress turns on TGF-B1, and TGF-B1 is just uncontroversially associated with the degree of fibrosis in many different problems. So they say, therefore, we suggest that the induction of TGF-B1 by androgen is mediated by reactive oxygen species in hair follicle dermal papilla cells. The progression of androgenic alopecia is closely related to androgen-inducible transforming growth factor TGF-B1 secretion by hair follicle dermal papilla cells in the bald scalp. TGF-B1 has been called the master switch of fibrosis. And this is just one example. They say an inhibitor of in vitro hair growth and a master switch of the fibrotic program. So just to reiterate, baldness is a complex problem, obviously, and many people have been hoping that there will be a cure released or a single pill or something like that. And I even said in one of my articles I didn't think a cure would ever come out, just because there won't be a cure for osteoporosis or a cure for PCOS or things like that, because they're so ridiculously complicated that they take I think a multi-layered approach is really the best approach. And I think there's some suggestions in the research that are actually jive with that point of view. So this one paper from 1985 said androgenic alopecia is probably a series of diseases with a common end pathway. And then another paper in 2014 said it is unlikely that a single targeted agent will be sufficient for treating androgenic alopecia, and therefore it would be a challenge to obtain compounds with multiple activities. And so to tag along on that, there was a book on fibrosis and just the pathology of fibrosis, and they thought that an anti-fibrotic therapy would include things that, one, removing causative agents, agents for cytoprotection or cell protection, anti-inflammatory agents, and anti-transforming growth factor beta 1 agents, or TGF-B1. And so, considering we already know that progesterone is helpful, you need enough thyroid to produce normal amounts of progesterone in both men and women. And so I could talk about milk, I could talk about cheese, their calcium content, and the protein's ability to increase IGF-1 and those foods having IGF-1 in them already, fructose, strong coffee, a diet low in the polyunsaturated fats, vitamin D, vitamin K2, antibiotics. But I'm not going to talk about those things. I'm going to talk about some other things, things that I talk about less often. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Apigenin. And I'm not really sure if I'm saying that right. I've never heard anybody say it. But Apigenin is a chemical found in guavas and mushrooms. And it is a really interesting chemical. It has a direct relation to hair loss. So they say, taken together, these findings suggest that Apigenin, which is known to have an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-tumor properties, stimulates hair growth through the downregulation of transforming growth factor beta 1 gene. That was done in 2009. And Apigenin is also an aromatase inhibitor. So they say several naturally occurring and synthetic flavones were found to inhibit aromatization. These flavones include Apigenin. Back to the first Apigenin reference, it's a powerful anti-inflammatory. So they say the study suggests that the modulation of COX-2 and inducible nitric oxide synthase by Apigenin and related flavonoids may be important in the prevention of carcinogenesis and inflammation. So the next substance I wanted to talk about was Androgenic, and this is found in things like sweet, non-sour orange juice and marmalade, and I'll actually link like a marmalade recipe that on my Facebook from Emma, the nutrition coach, and I love marmalade. It seems so cheap and it seems to be extremely useful. They say that in conclusion, these results demonstrate that Androgenic exhibited in vivo hepaprotective and anti-fibrogenic effects. It suggests that Androgenic may be useful in preventing the development of hepatic fibrosis. And that was in 2004. Another paper says Androgenic could be an ideal therapeutic agent in the treatment of both cancer and fibrosis in 2009. And Androgenic decreases a variety of inflammatory factors involved in baldness. And they say these results indicate that Androgenic could attenuate diabetic neuropathy via its anti-inflammatory and anti-fibrotic activities. And similar to Apigenin, it decreases nitric oxide in prostaglandin synthesis. So the third thing I want to talk about is aspirin, and this is a controversial substance. So I encourage everybody to read Ray Peat's article on aspirin, because reading that a few times was the thing that kind of changed my mind. But it's so cheap. You can dissolve it in water and avoid the excipients, and it's an aromatase inhibitor. So it just seems really useful, and it's good for fibrosis. So let's talk about that. And so they say few treatments have been proposed to alter the hepatocyte regenerative activity in the cirrhotic liver. To date, none have been proven effective. Aspirin and azoxaparin decrease the extent of fibrosis by 43% and 36%. Respectively, suggesting that the antithrombotic effect has an important role in preventing the progression of fibrosis. The results of this present study indicate that low-dose aspirin both prevents the progression of fibrosis and stimulates liver regeneration in a rat model of cirrhosis. Aspirin just has a bunch of unique qualities. It increases carbon dioxide, increases cyclic AMP, it decreases the conversion of arachidonic acid to prostaglandins, and it just is supportive of mitochondrial respiration in general. So last thing I wanted to talk about that I think probably gives the most bang for the buck, and I know there was a MD that was really fond of using gelatin for male pattern baldness, and I'll link that somewhere up here, but gelatin. So gelatin is a protein. It's like the other half of the animal if you consider muscle meat and then gelatinous protein. And in the West, at least, we get very limited amounts of gelatin. And the protein in gelatin, glycine, among other proteins, is uniquely beneficial, especially for fibrosis. So one study said, in conclusion, administration of glycine had a positive influence on both quantitative and qualitative properties of hepatic collagen in alcoholic liver injury. And I think in that study, they were dosing the rats with alcohol and giving them glycine, and it was protective even when they were continually administering alcohol. And then just in general, glycine has been called a novel anti-inflammatory, and they say Glycine protects against shock caused by hemorrhage, endotoxin, and sepsis, prevents ischemia, reperfusion and cold storage reperfusion injury to a variety of tissues and organs, including liver, kidney, heart, intestine, and skeletal muscle, and diminishes liver and renal injury caused by hepatic and renal toxicants and drugs. So that was it. I just wanted to talk about Apigenin, Naringenin, aspirin, and gelatin, and more specifically glycine, as being protective things that you might not encounter on baldness forms, as being protective and possibly reversing fibrosis, and not only the balding area of the scalp, which is enduring lots of inflammatory effects, but also other organs. So that was it for me. I know that was a lot to chew on, but if you have any questions, I'll try to be hanging out in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. That really encourages me to keep on doing them. And again, I have an amazing viewership and I sincerely appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.